Greetings, Canada. Greetings, Europe. Greetings, Philippines. Hello, world. Very excited to be with you today. Thank you for being visible this week. Lots of people last week were just hidden because evidently they were in t-shirts and underwear and their hair wasn't done, so they didn't want to show what they looked like. But this week, we're all professional. We're all looking sharp, so get excited. Let's take some notes today if you're in that mood. Last week, as you recall, I hope, we talked about when the problem is not the problem. We talked about little problems that start off tiny, and you ignore them or you try to bat them away, and then they grow and they grow and they grow until they become crises in your life. So to counteract that and to develop new habits, we have to talk about making commitments, and that's what we're talking about today, making commitments. If you want a more clever title that I'm going to get to in a few minutes, it's the old Chinese proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with but a single step. Yes, yes, friends. So we're going to talk about little habits, little commitments. So I got to tell you, I have to admit, if you ask me to do something that's of some size, I'm slow to commit. I am slow to commit. I usually think about it a little bit because when I say I'm going to do something, I do it, period. Take it to the bank. You can count on me because I always try to follow our 4 success habits that we've discussed in the past at LGFG. And they are, for your review, or if you're new, be on time, do what you say, finish what you start, say please and thank you. Those are 4 things. And 2 of those are all about making and keeping commitments. So a leader who's reluctant to commit really, I think, respects the value of what commitments are about. You guys probably have friends that are just, they'll agree to anything. Like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'll go. And then they're nowhere to be seen, right? They drop the ball. They let you down. They say one thing and they do another. Their walk doesn't match their talk. But if you want to have remarkable success in LGFG or anywhere, or even in your life, success demands commitment. So I would say reluctance to commit is natural, but refusal to commit is deadly. Okay? Make your commitments with hesitance, because once you do it, you got to follow through. So I would say this, just as a part of our intro, the courage to commit is the beginning of success. All right? If you're in a little bit of a slump now or you're frustrated, the courage to just make a commitment, to get it done, to make a change, that's the beginning of success. So let me start off, and I'm going to talk about 3 benefits of making commitments, and then we're going to talk about mini habits. That'll be the second part of our call. This will go real quick. So, and it's a super easy concept. I know you've been dealing with all kinds of stuff all day long, dialing and people with status and floating. So I'm going to go real easy on you today and just talk about making tiny commitments that'll change your life. All right. First benefit of making commitments is it increases your creativity. It increases your creativity because you can't figure out how to do what you don't want to do. You know what I mean? You can't figure out how to do what you don't want to do. I mean, I think of myself. When I was floating back in the day. A lot of you talk to me about floating. You're like, floating, kind of makes your stomach go, ugh. But some of you, if you were tuned in, how many of you got to hear Cal and Rita's broadcast? Did you hear that on floating? I mean, that was tremendous. The whole notion of intention and freedom from outcome. I don't care what happens. Woohoo! Kamikaze, you know, go for it. The machine gun approach. I loved it. But back to my talk. You can't figure out how to do what you don't want to do inside, right? So you figure out how to fulfill commitments. Lack of commitments, I think, makes you dumb. You're just like, I really should float, but I don't feel like it. And it would help me. And I'd get some activity points and probably a bunch of business cards, but I'm going to think about it for a while. You know, I've talked to tons of people about that. So they want to commit, but they're not quite committed. So I think about, it's the same thing with finances, you know? Yeah, I really should start saving money. That would be really smart. Huh? I'll think about that and I'll commit at some point. Okay. That's nothing. Okay. There is no try, only do. Remember who said that? Yoda. You're right. Go watch Star Wars. He's like, there is no try, only do. Okay. So that's an assignment. Go watch some Star Wars. All right. So here's the first point then. The one benefit is increased creativity. All right. The second thing is that you get energy. Energy follows making a commitment. Okay. Before commitments, you're reluctant, you're lethargic, you don't have much energy, but commitments give you direction and energy. Potential energy is useless until you release it with a commitment. Okay. And here's the third benefit is that you limit your options. You limit your options. In other words, if you're taking notes, you're establishing your priorities. If you make a commitment, it tells you this is what's important to me. All right? Because if you don't have commitment, then you are distracted by anything and everything that's going on. That reminded me when I was thinking about this. You remember that old Pixar movie, Up? It was a great movie. I think that was the one with the dog in it who was a little bit scatterbrained, and every time he was like, squirrel, all the action would stop, squirrel, because he'd be distracted by stuff that wasn't important to his mission in the movie. So apart from commitment, there's all kinds of shiny objects and things that can distract us. But when you commit, you get focused. Like when you get married or, partnership, whatever, when you get committed to that, you eliminate other options, hopefully, right? You don't say, yeah, let's get married. Now I'm going to continue dating other people. No, that's not commitment. That's a really bad idea. Okay. So when you make a commitment, it establishes your priorities. This is important to me. So drifting is kind of excluded when you commit to excel, which is, I know what you guys are about. So let me go through some commitment tips, because I know some of you are like, okay, I want to do well. I want to commit. I want to change my habits. So here's some ideas. And these are taken from a book. I'm just, there's no way you could read all the books that we promote in our morning calls, but this is one called Mini Habits, tiny, Mini Habits by Stephen Guise. Okay. So I'm going to steal from him because I kind of like it. Number one tip is to make small commitments. Make small commitments that you can do. In his book, he said his commitment to do one push-up a day changed his life. One push-up. And you're like, what? Yeah. He also talked about writing books and doing blogs. He said the commitment to go to his office and just put his hands on the keyboard, it turned into like 3,000 blog posts and a book. So the author didn't set out to write 3,000 blogs, right? If that were the case, he never would have started. So you have to pick something that's so small, it's embarrassingly small, but it gets you on the right path. Does that make sense? Okay. So a lot of us will make these gigantic commitments and go like, yeah, I'm just going to do it. Woo. And if that works, do it. If it doesn't, don't. We get to do what works. Here's the second tip on making commitments. Commit just for today. Okay? Commit just for today. There was a saying that we used to say in my previous company at Southwestern, and this will make sense if you're using a non-metric system, but it was, by the inch, it's a cinch. It's easy. By the yard, it's hard. In other words, if you take a tiny bite, you can get the elephant eaten, to change my metaphor. If you try to eat the whole elephant at once, you're overwhelmed. And some of you are like, what? What are you talking about, eating an elephant? Skip that analogy. Don't worry about it. But I'm just saying, small steps. Commit for today. I heard a wise man once say that setting like a 5-year goal or a 10-year goal, I just thought that is so hard for me to do mentally. Some of you are good at that. For me, it's difficult. But what he said was, what he decided was he would make smaller, tinier goals in little chunks. And if he made the next right step over the course of time, 5 years, then he would have reached where he wanted to go. So those are the little baby steps that are important. Okay? So example, you might decide, if you tend to be a very critical person, you might commit just for today to affirm, make 3 affirmations or build somebody up instead of criticizing them. Just something different. That might be, you can think about LGFG, you can think about your life. All right. Here's the last tip. Then I'll get into something a little bit different from the book. He says, commit with. Commit with. That means find a commitment partner. A lot of you have accountability partners, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. Find someone who will commit with you. You can go further than you can alone if you're with someone else. So find somebody you like, find somebody you trust, find somebody who'll kick your butt if you need it, and say, hey, this is the path I want to take. Can you help me get there? All right. So I'm going to commit to this tiny little step. And then if I don't do it, here's what I want you to tell me. So tell them how you want to be coached. All right. So he talks about some other stuff. There's some interesting random stuff. Like he said, successful leaders try things. So you might just try stuff to get out of your comfort zone. I know that some of you are working hard to get out of your comfort zone. That's good. It makes you stretch. Here's another thought too, random, not in any particular order. Leaders persistently turn toward the future, not the past. Okay? They turn to the future. They're forward thinkers. How many people do you know that just live in the past? A la Jethro Tull, living in the past. They are simply, gosh, I remember back in the day when, whatever. And they remember the good old days. Well, the good old days weren't that great. Anyway, I'm telling you, because I was around back then. So future orientation. Dan Sullivan, who was one of my favorite Canadian consultants from the Strategic Coach, he says, always associate with people whose future is bigger than their past. Their future is bigger than their past. That's the type of people you want to be with. You don't want people who are, even clients, gosh, that are 50 years old who are dreaming about the days when they were 23. Come on, it's the past. All right. So I would encourage you to do something where failure matters. That's kind of your big goal. And then you break it down with these little tips. So let me give you a couple more thoughts from Mini Habits. And then if you have some ideas or thoughts or success, if you've had that, then you can pipe up. I mentioned that Stephen Guise did 1 push-up, and that changed his whole exercise routine for like 10 years. So here's kind of to explain what he's talking about, what actually happened. He said, I tried getting motivated, and that worked sometimes. How many of us do that? You tell yourself, I just got to get motivated. Or like floating. I just got to get motivated to float. Well, again, if it doesn't work, chuck it. Don't tell yourself that. Here's another thing. He tried setting in management courses, or if you're in a business, they have, one goal setting approach is to set BHAGs, BHAG, and that stands for big, hairy, audacious goals. And when you, again, if that gets you fired up, cool, set those. But when he set those audacious goals, he almost always failed to keep them. All right. And so he tried to make changes, but they didn't last. So his assumption was that was a problem he had. That problem was internal. But he said one afternoon after he failed, to get motivated on the exercise front, he accidentally started his first mini habit. And he committed to do, his commitment, which is laughable, was to do 1 push-up. And when he did that, it turned into a full workout. He said he was shocked. That stupid idea wasn't even supposed to work. And that strategy of just doing something tiny and that leads you down the right path, he just found all of his prior strategies about beating himself up. You got to work harder. Just do it. Nike, just do. Those didn't work for him. So he decided to do these little mini habits. So you can succeed no matter what you try to do without the guilt and the repeated failure of strategies like that. Like, I remember when we talked in January, I discussed, I am not a huge New Year's resolutionist, right? And you always go to the gym in January, if you're part of a gym, and the place is flooded with what I call the resolutionists. They're all the people who are like, yeah, I'm going to get fit this year. And they're there about 2 or 3 weeks at the most. And then all the machines clear off and you've got your space again. So those strategies a lot of times don't work. So his point is you need to stop using strategies if they're not giving you great results, which makes sense. What they do, they don't work because they all require you to fight against your subconscious brain. And that's not a fight that you win. Consciously, you're like, I need to do this. But your subconscious, which is the part you have to influence, doesn't change. So you've got to start playing by your brain's rules and taking some of your limitations a little bit more seriously. And mini habits are a different strategy, I think, that works to achieve lasting change. So what's a mini habit? A mini habit is a very small positive behavior that you force yourself to do every day. Okay? And the word force probably isn't the right verb. It's too small to fail. It's weightless because it's easy, but it's also really powerful and a superior habit building strategy. In the States a few years ago, we went through in 2008 this financial crisis, and all the big banks were about to go belly up, meaning bankrupt. There was a huge financial crisis. And so they said the government has to bail out the banks. Why? Because they're too big to fail. Well, I'm asking you to make a mini habit where it's just too small to fail. I mean, it's just like, wow, this is ridiculous, but I can do this. And then you can maybe build off of that. Okay. You have no choice but to believe in yourself when you're always moving forward. So the barrier to that first step is so low that even depressed people or stuck people can find that early success and begin to reverse where they're headed. So I want you to write down, if you haven't thought of this, an area you want to change or a habit you want to form, or a direction you want to take at LGFG. Just jot down something that you would like to attack and work on. Okay, first of all. And then when I hang up here in a few minutes, if you're with a group, or even if you're alone, I want you to think about or discuss what is a doable mini habit that will put you on the right path. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles is begun with but a single step, a tiny step. So you've heard people, I don't know if you've heard people say this, but we have an idiom that says, you know, shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you'll at least hit the stars, which really sounds cool. And I guess the message is you should aim high, and even if you fall short, you'll get somewhere. But a lot of people find the opposite is true, you know, in regard to their productivity and healthy behaviors. When you shoot for the moon, you won't shoot it because it's too far away. So what you do is you shoot for that next step in front of you, and you might just keep going and reach the moon. Okay? So we're just talking about little victories, small steps, and moving toward a direction. Because when you take that small step, it gives you confidence, and you're like, hey, check it out. I'm actually on a path. I can do that. And then that might lead to something else, maybe something a little bit bigger. But some of us try to wrap our arms around these massive changes all at once. And it's too hard and it doesn't last. Then you get to beat yourself up. Oh, I'm such a loser. I can't keep my commitments to myself. No, let's start small. Does that make sense? Nod your head if it makes sense. Yes? Can everybody think of an area or a habit or a change that you would like to make? Yeah. So write down a tiny commitment or an area first, and then a tiny commitment you can make right now and do. What mini habit can you begin? Right? So that will be your thinking, discussing assignment. I just, when we were talking with Hong Kong last night, Chenda occasionally says wise things. He often says wise things. And I said, well, think of something a small little habit that makes a big difference. And he said, well, I remember back in the day before we had all the cool software and programs to help us facilitate what we do. He just said it was a mini habit that you had to make your first call by 9 a.m. Just, no matter what. That was a tiny little commitment. I like that. And I loved what Cal was talking about. I've still got to finish the recording where he talked about just like when you're out floating, minimum time between interactions. That's smart. That's a good little habit, because otherwise we go sit down and go, let me think. And that, as we know, is death. So, so think of what you want to work on and what's a small step. Anybody got something you want to share with us before you head off and do other things?
I was thinking about saying hi to one stranger every day. That was, yeah.
That is a great idea. I give you this. I mean, seriously, that's good, Charles. When I was recruiting people, and you just get, and that's essentially floating. I would just make it a habit. It's typical in the U.S. that when you get on an elevator or a lift, you look at two things. You either look up at the numbers across the top and you stand staring at like, wow, look at the cool lights. Or you look at the buttons. You touch your button and then you stare straight ahead. So what I did, which just got out of my comfort zone, it was such a small little mini habit baby step, is I would just say, hi. And they'd go, huh? Oh, hi. Or they would look at me funny, but broke the ice. I like that, saying hi to people. Very good. Anybody else? Great idea. Okay. Strength in numbers. Stay muted. All right. Good. So you know what your assignment is. Make a tiny commitment. Move forward. Think, what mini habit can I begin? Some of you might want to go to Amazon and order the book, Mini Habits by Stephen Guise, Guise, if you don't have anything else to read. All right? So you're all leaders. You can have a discussion about what prevents leaders from making commitments or what's held you back in the past. All fruitful discussions. Go forward. Keep winning. I appreciate you guys, what you're doing, working hard, doing the grind. It'll all pay off if you're patient. Until next week. See you later. Thank you. Have a good one.